Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome back to SocietyCast, our virtual speaker series aimed at facilitating inspiration, insights, and innovation amongst all of you, amongst our network. I'm your host. My name is Vianney Lubis, Vice President of the Alumni Society, and I'm coming to you here from my home here in Chicago. Now to kick off, I see many of you are already doing so, which is fantastic. I do want to encourage you to use our live chat here on the right-hand side. Share where you're joining us from, where you're tuning in from, and also say hello to each other and to us. Now, in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and invite our speakers to join me. But before I do that, I always like to go through a few of the housekeeping items just to share how our session is going to go for those of you who are new to this program today. So we're going to have about 25 minutes with our speaker, followed by an interactive Q&A session with all of you. So there are two main ways to ask your questions today. You can submit a question at any time using the Ask a Question feature, which is just located right at the bottom of the screen. And a pro tip, if someone has a question that is similar to yours, you can actually just go ahead and upvote that. It'll rise it to the top and it'll ensure that it gets answered. In addition, I will be monitoring the chat box. So if that's easier for you, feel free to use that. We can use that as well for questions. So let's go ahead and invite our speakers to join me. Hello, Pedro. Hi, Miguel.
Hello.
So everyone, I want to introduce you to our speakers today. First, Miguel Quiroga. In February of 2018, Miguel became the CEO of Visible, which is the first all-digital wireless carrier in the United States. And he draws on his 20 years of telecommunications and product design experience to essentially disrupt an industry. So a little bit about Visible. It's backed by Verizon. It has no stores, call centers, or paper bills. It offers one unlimited plan, talk, text, data, and mobile hotspot. And I think the best part is it's at one price, $40 all in. Under Miguel's leadership, Visible is uniquely engineered to completely change and simplify the experience of consumers and to revolutionize the mobile industry. And to note, just a few months ago, Fast Company named Visible one of the most innovative companies of 2020. So very honored to be here with you, Miguel, the man at the helm of that great company. Interviewing Miguel is our fearless CEO and co-founder of the Alumni Society, Pedro Antonio Guerrero. So thank you so much for your time today. Excited to hear the conversation. And Pedro, with that, I'll let you take the floor and I will be back to close.
Thank you, Vianney. Miguel, nice to see you again.
Likewise.
Thank you for joining us today. I want to start with simply asking you, how are you doing? Where are you sheltering in place? Give us an idea of what your day-to-day has been like over the past couple of months.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been leading the team from home out in Colorado. It has absolutely been an ongoing process, like it has for everyone. I have a new baby at home, and it's been an adjustment, but a positive one. I'm getting a lot more family time. I think it's been interesting because we have, as a business, and I personally have aggressive goals of where we want to achieve certain things. But I think what's been interesting is we're trying to keep our culture intact. We're trying to maintain our own health, mental health, physical health, but also make sure the culture continues to grow. Thinking about things like routine and sometimes like formalizing the informal is kind of the thing, like a little bit like date night at home. You have to have date night at work, creating some deliberate human connection that you miss in the office. So whether it's breakfast or coffee or making the all hands experience really an experience, we're trying to feel more connected than ever before. Trying to slow down a bit to connect with each other as we try to speed up work.
We'll talk a little bit more about remote work at Visible later, but I did want to talk about innovation at Visible. As Vianney mentioned earlier this year, Fast Company was named Visible as one of the most innovative companies of 2020, which is an incredible honor. Can you share your approach on innovation? What propels you and the team forward to think and operate differently?
No, it's a great question. And, we're incredibly excited and honored by the recognition. Honestly, the thing we think about is often that for all of us, everyone's a consumer, right? Everyone buys stuff. So great experience is not defined by a category alone. There's so many different companies who are redefining consumer expectations. So it's all of those different experiences that define what you expect as a consumer. We've always thought about a simple customer experience as something that's incredibly easy to imagine, but incredibly difficult to build and maintain as you start to build a business. So we've been thinking about the mechanisms of constantly testing and learning as we approach problem solving for operating differently. The communications industry is incredibly complex. If you think about customer satisfaction across categories, only the government categories perform worse. So it's only is it going to DMV or paying your taxes that's worse than dealing with the carrier. So, we think about our business model as simplicity and as a consumer that you can sign up from anywhere. And we are super clear on exactly trying to give them the right type of things in terms of what exactly are they getting, what are they paying for, and having a high confidence and trust so their experience isn't compromised. We think that's a differentiator of some simplicity is and resonates with our customer. But we're also trying to build the operational approach, the problem solving mechanism, the psychology behind the scenes to actually make sure that we think and operate differently to achieve kind of those goals that we have as we build our business.
And can you share a little bit about your journey going from Verizon to Visible, and what's it like being a CEO for the first time?
Yeah. Well, prior to Visible, I had a variety of different leadership roles. And I was very fortunate that a lot of them were stretching way beyond and growing, scaling, and expanding. But ultimately, it was ultimately about consumer outcomes and how do you build better experiences for customers. And there was a framework, I think, that resonated throughout. One is strategic thinking and future-proof vision. Like, how do you build something that's built to last? Building stuff. It's building teams, experiences, products, but also running scalable operations. And I think all of those experiences brought me to the really great opportunity here at Visible to design and build a company from scratch. Something that's customer-centric in terms of its growth trajectory, experience first. Verizon's first ever sub-brand. It's never been done in Verizon's history. And doing it with a blank sheet of paper. That's such a unique opportunity. It really allowed me to tap into a lot of experiences around engineering, design, product, and marketing, and ultimately revenue growth, where we're trying to merge the best of technology businesses with the telco industry. It's been incredibly rewarding. I think what's been interesting is, building a team and a brand and a tech stack and the operations to support it while simultaneously growing. It's a continuous process. The analogy I'd give you, it's kind of like driving a car across country. You kind of know where your journey is going to go, but we're constantly trying to go further and faster every day, and we're simultaneously changing the engine out while we're driving. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but it's been an incredible experience. I think about this moment in time too, as a CEO. Nothing from any of my experience or any of the CEOs I talked to, no one's like, oh yeah, I was totally prepped for a global pandemic, like a generational global pandemic, mind you. And societal change movement, like this has just been something that's very unique. But I think what carried us a lot and what I've been struck by is our team, their ability to be nimble and maintain our strategic agility, our grit and determination. We've been very fortunate. I think that the DNA makeup we have as a business primed us to deal with rapid change. It's just so striking to me. We're an e-commerce business at the end of the day. And, we've always thought ourselves as the future of phone service. It just so happened like the future caught up and the future is now. And so we're trying to feel our way through that process.
Yeah, I once heard someone talk about this time we're living in as just accelerating behaviors, training a whole mass of people that aren't used to working remotely or using these digital technologies. Have you felt that impact also on your business? And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because like if you're an established business, you're probably trying to do a digital transformation. And a business like ours, we were a digital business from the get-go, but there's still an opportunity to teach consumers that this is a better way to interact. And that's why I think the opportunity is, how do we teach consumer behavior?
Right.
And let's be fair, like not everyone, is using technology the same way to stay connected. And we have opportunities when we think about our workforce every day to make that better.
So one question I like to ask is, someone that started a new role, is what do you wish you knew prior? What do you know now, as CEO, that you wish you knew prior to starting in this new role?
Yeah, I think a healthy reminder that, what got you there won't necessarily get you to the next spot, but also don't lose sight of your core principles. Like leadership principles are still so crucial at every layer of the business, and particularly in the role I'm in. When leading end to end, it's even more crucial to maintain the focus on the core leadership principles. And one example for me is the concept of like a perpetual learner and a lifetime student. My mom was a teacher and my dad was an engineer, and they kind of emphasize that focus on learning every day. And I think I kind of ingested that, and this idea of learning every day, becoming the student to your craft and optimizing. It's a principle around product development, but it's expanding your knowledge. But I think the key to this is one thing to learn, it's another thing to act, making strategic, conscious choices honing that skill is a short-term and long-term frame of reference. It's always important, and it's something that's particularly important in the role that I'm taking today.
And as CEO, who do you turn to for guidance or advice? We've had a lot of moments in the past, I would say 90 days plus, that 4 a.m. call moment. Have you had those, and who do you turn to when you have to?
It's a great question. I do obviously try to nurture kind of the battery of people that I've built over the years of kind of my trusted advisor community, people I really trust to help advise me in different layers, whether it's other CEOs or other people I've worked with. I definitely also, talk to my dad quite a bit about business in general, not the details of the business, but the concepts behind it. I think he came from an engineering background, but a lot of the principles around engineering still apply to running a business. And I think that's, I'm an engineer myself. I'm a software engineer by training. So I think a lot of those principles do apply towards scaling a technology business. And I think a little bit of his hearts and minds and his attitude, I think, is really more than anything else I'm really tapping into. He grew up in Bolivia, and when he migrated to the U.S. and immigrated here and eventually went to school, I think his willpower mentality, which is at times can be incredibly frustrating because he always believes there's a better way, no matter if it's already been solved 15 times over, including any dynamic he had with me as a child, I think is something that really rings true to me as I think about leading a business, the way that we're trying to kind of manage through the times as everyone is.
If he's anything like my parents, they give you unsolicited advice. Are your parents giving you unsolicited advice that actually resonates when in doing what you do?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's always that, now that I'm a parent too, I understand exactly what that meant. I mean, a couple of years before when I didn't have kids, I'm like, I don't think I would have really understood it quite the same. I think the key advice though is basically just stay focused, stay positive. There's always a better tomorrow, and you can manage anything. I mean, I think you can, and the survive and thrive mentality, I think that comes from culture, both from my mom and my dad, I think has been very particularly crucial.
So a few weeks ago, Visible announced to its employees that the work from home policy is going to be permanent. I think it goes into effect October 1st. So as a digital only company, walk us through how you landed on that decision. Was this something that was already pre-baked before COVID, or and COVID accelerated the decision? And what does it mean for the future of the workforce at Visible?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One of the things we think about, so we're here to fundamentally change how consumers interact with their mobile carrier. And for me, I always thought of how do we push the boundaries of what the future of work becomes? One of the questions that was always in my head, it was like, what is the future of our workforce? If our consumers can sign up and manage a service from the comfort of their home, why can't our employees do something similar? What does that look like? Now, that was just an idea. It wasn't something that we were really seriously exploring, but it was always there in the back of my mind. But then when COVID hit us, we're like, well, maybe we need to think about that a little bit differently. I'd had the experience of managing a lot of global teams over the years in different formats where I might be the only person in an office, but my team was spread out over the globe. And that transition was hard, but this transition is a different transition because now everyone's kind of on the level playing field. It's a personal thing. It's not just the home office issue. It's like, this is my only work-life integration moment. Like there's nothing about me going outside the home for non-work stuff as well in the same way people used to. So while that transition I think has been a challenge for all of us, I'm proud to say we didn't miss a beat in our operations. We've actually seen better connection. We've actually seen better onboarding, perhaps people putting more attention to detail upon creating those connections. So we made that choice. And one of the reasons we made that is we are a new business. So we're just a couple years old. Our tenure is relatively young. It's probably 18 months of tenure in terms of employee tenure. So our culture is actually evolving and improving by the day. So the thought was, let's get good at this right now. Let's make this awesome. When will it make sense to reconnect in person? We'll figure that out too. But in the meantime, let's make this awesome. And I think that's what we've been really putting our attention behind. The other thing is this opens up new opportunities for talent too. We're now hiring in an unconstrained by location, which allows us to attract talent from all around the country. I mean, in every industry, we're actually hiring now. So, if you're interested in kind of come do some awesome stuff and build great things, please reach out. We're definitely interested in hearing from you as well.
That's great. So what advice would you give? I think you may have a leg up as a digital focused company. There's a lot of companies that aren't. What advice would you give to companies or executives that are contemplating similar decisions about working remotely permanently?
It's one of the things I can't stress enough is employee experience and engagement. It is every step of the process from onboarding, but continuous kind of connection, the need to create human connection. It's not just a video chat. As humans, we're not actually designed to look at flat monitors for 8 hours a day, right? It just doesn't work, right? And technology might catch up, or maybe virtual reality and other things give you a much more natural experience. But in the meantime, you've got to find other ways to create real connection. So, we've been focusing a lot on the formalizing the informal, like I mentioned before, of how do you actually create more organic conversations you used to have in the office. So if you had the coffee break moment, can you actually formally create a coffee break, and then no work is discussed for an hour, and do it cross-functionally. It's not just the team it's the people you don't know. And we actually find that people are now actually breaking through silos that way. They're actually paying more attention to each other. The other thing I would share is the focus on really asynchronous collaboration, and by that I mean offline collaboration. So what can you do to share information status without a meeting? Can you actually share information cleanly without a meeting, so that the meetings are for connection, the meetings are for strategic live decisions and live collaboration? It means therefore less meetings is the attention. We're still working through how to do that, but then how do you present more status in a different format? And then I think that's kind of what success will look like as you think about these types of models.
And so what do you feel like has been a surprise for you making this move?
So I think what was interesting, So we actually had some people who weren't part of the core teams in terms of location, and their reaction was, "Oh my gosh, this is the best meeting I've ever had, because now everyone's on a level playing field." Right? There's never this issue of I am left out because I'm not part of the crew that happens to be sitting in the office. That's an experience I think that a lot of our team shared. That was surprising. I've actually been surprised also by how so many people have embraced making this work for them. I think, it's interesting. We all as humans across any business now, we're you can pick up the phone and talk to anyone. They're yeah, exactly. I know what you're going through. Literally, I know exactly what you're going through, which is almost never happens. Right. So in many ways, it creates kind of a connection in a different way. So I think people are actually closer, even though I think we miss the physical interaction for sure that we'd like to have.
Right. And so some of this is behavioral, and you talk about wanting to be the Netflix of phone carriers. And so how are you tapping into existing consumer behaviors to move digital alternatives into wireless carriers?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, one of the things I think about is the world's been moving virtual digital for a long time. I mean, it's 20 plus years of e-commerce and 12 plus years of the smartphone, yet somehow the carrier industry never caught up. And there's a lot of industries that haven't caught up. I think what's happened is many businesses haven't kind of figured out how to tap into those new behaviors and what does it actually mean for consumers. I often think about a digital world as a kind of it could be a very harsh world. There's nobody here to hear you scream when it doesn't work. And digital interactions are pretty much like a window into the soul of a business. If you get it right, then you can see the good. If you get it bad, and all of a sudden that shows directly to the consumer. We've taken the approach of really studying consumer behavior, really making our choices and decisions based on listening and really direct feedback from our customers. The key principle for us is the how. What's the process for how we understand a consumer needs and the psychology to doing work and problem solving in terms of product development and design. That's a bit more of what we put our attention behind, the feedback loop, the strategic agility. To your point of companies like Netflix, they get it right because they have a clear understanding, I think, of consumer needs, having an adaptable infrastructure to react quickly, but then actually acting. So often, I think in a larger business, it's difficult to act quickly. And we're trying to take advantage of that strategic agility so that, Visible is often mirroring some of those things we've seen from some of these more successful tech companies.
Wow. And so we're going to make some time for audience questions. But before we do that, one of the things I'd like to talk about is Visible Connect, which has given over millions of dollars to critical causes. Can you share more about that work and, why does it matter to you and how is it synergistic with the company strategy?
Yeah, I think that the Visible Connect effort for us was something that the team was passionate about from the get-go. It's a social accelerator, social good program. And we actually launched it before we even actually acquired our first customer. And the thinking we had behind it was, look, we are an essential service, one that is designed to meet the most basic of human needs, and that is of human connection. So you think about like food, water, roof over your head, then, if we're providing connection, how can we help communities and society at large? It's something I'm personally passionate about, the team is passionate about. So we actually identified organizations who are making a measurable impact. And we're pleased to see that a lot of these organizations are getting recognized like by the likes of MIT and the Gates Foundation, but even more pleased that they're being mostly new majority led, which I think was really important for us, especially during these times. And I feel like it's starting to make a difference. I mean, just one anecdote of like the type of thing that we know we have to help with. Like we had one of our programs, we had a young member who reached out to us who was actually experiencing homelessness during the crisis. Their shelter had shut down and they were literally using what funds they had left to pay for their phone service because that's their connection to the world. And like that type of need and what we can do to help that type of member, that's why we exist. These are moments like that, I think, that really what touch us and kind of strive us to make ourselves better every day.
That's an incredible story. I think we have some questions from our audience that we could pivot to. The first one being, what's the best or most impactful way you've intentionalized company culture and connection, which you started to touch on briefly with the scheduled coffee talks. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I would say I'll give you two examples, actually, not just one, because I think there's two dynamics. One is the all hands. We actually have always had a weekly all hands, and we've had it since long before COVID. It's since the beginning of the company. And as the company grew, it got bigger and bigger and more unwieldy, but still we did it because it's a moment to connect. But then now we actually spend a lot more time having the all hands to be not just top down, but it's a shared experience. We have everyone presenting, everyone sharing, getting to know each other are key moments. Our communications team and our employee experience teams are putting a lot of attention and making it truly an experience. So employee engagement in all levels, and that is a shared experience. So we can somehow create moments like that internally. The other is small format meetings. So I do skip levels, like for example, where we have a cohort where I try to rotate to the whole company. Once a week, I'm meeting with exactly how many people I can fit into like a Google Hangout or a Slack, or something like this is like 5 to 6 people, that's it. And we can all go on video. And then we talk about everything that comes to mind. It's not necessarily work. It's about what's going on in your personal life. And I think that for me has helped build connection. I see actually the team doing similar examples of that. Like they'll open up a video chat and instead of actually having a meeting, they just hang out while they do their work, and there's moments like this where they're more organic that we have to think about creating and crafting.
Yeah, the new pizza rule for a meeting will be the number of tiles that you can get.
The number of tiles you can have, yeah.
Exactly. We have a question here about the vision of Visible in comparison to a competitor. Can you elaborate on the vision, your vision in comparison to some of the other digital carriers out there that are perhaps attempting to do something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about ourselves, we're the first 100% all digital carrier. And so we're actually a full stack carrier. We're facilities based. You'd be surprised to know there's probably over 100 different competitors in the carrier market. But there's very few actually that have facilities, and therefore we have that. Plus, we have the combination of being truly an e-commerce business. So that right from the beginning sets our choices and our economics in a different place. Our business model is fundamentally different. So because we're a full stack carrier, we create great experiences. We sit on the back of Verizon's 4G LTE network, but then we can pass that value directly to the consumer. And so our focus around our business model is transparency, clarity, knowing exactly what you're getting, and simplicity at its core. So you can actually deal with us in an easy way, like deal with us as a business from the comfort of your home. And that fundamentally, I think, sets us apart. And we've seen that really positive consumer reaction as we continue to grow the business.
Okay, I have another question here. Does your Latino background and heritage influence how you lead? If so, can you talk about how leaders should lean into their identidad and bring that into the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of like how I shared my dad's story and history. I mean, he has a level of kind of intensity, if you will, and a never quit attitude. And I think it comes from his upbringing, There's a sentiment across, I think, where he grew up in Bolivia in particular about never say die, never say quit. And I think that's kind of something you have to have in any business, particularly a business that, the first day we went to market, like nobody knows about us. I mean, literally nobody knows about us. And I think in many ways that type of emphasis around really, digging in and never quitting, having a lot of grit and determination, always believing that there's a better tomorrow, I think is something that I definitely bring from my heritage. It's something I value.
That's great. That sounds like advice you need in any position right now. Right.
Yeah.
So we have a question here from Rosa. As you know, there's a lot of noise in this small category from providers large and small. So how are you breaking through that clutter? And is Verizon actively promoting you as well?
Yeah. So a couple points to this. I mean, I think first of all, we break through by standing alone in terms of what we offer. A simple, easy to use experience. If anything, surprises so many people that in of itself is a conversation. You can see it in the press. We've had hundreds and hundreds of articles of positive feedback and intent from across the industry and from our members. We are very organic in the way we talk to our consumers one-to-one. And in many ways, that allows us to stand apart. And we think that that's been important. We've recently done some more mass market campaigns combined with very targeted digital marketing. I think the combination of the two really are helping us grow the way we like to grow. Verizon's obviously an investor. It's the investor for us as the fully owned subsidiary. So clearly they're fully supportive of us and give us a lot of support as we continue to grow the business.
If I heard you correctly, you've used a word to reference the customer as a member.
That's correct?
Is that right?
That's intentional. That's intentional. Yeah. We think about yeah. Well, yeah, sure. So there's a customer, but a member implies that there's a community. And we think about society as a community to help, and we think about our customer base as a membership community to serve. And we're intentional about that because we believe that approach towards running a business makes sure that we think about it not as transactional, right? This is a relationship we're trying to build. And so that's why we think about the word membership more than just customer or subscriber.
All right, thank you for that. We have another question here. As you discussed, the people well, there we go. Just jumped here. Visible looks like an answer to the question, quote, if we dismantled everything and built a company from scratch, what would it look like? How jealous are your Verizon colleagues? And what have they learned from your fresh approach so far?
Yeah, it's a fun question because actually that's the question I love to ask is like, if you just started from scratch, blank sheet of paper, and even in place, like write what we're doing, sometimes it's like better to start over than to just like continue to fix it. It's like sometimes, you can keep playing with the soup, but eventually there's too much salt and you got to start over, right? It's like there's some appetite to kind of continually reinvent. Certainly Verizon picks up a lot of learnings and vice versa. I think the value of our innovation is, you can innovate from within, which is something I had an experience of doing in the prior role when I was running the Fios e-commerce business. But in this case, it's also innovate from without. And I think in that way, we can learn what it means to stand alone and try to do certain things. But of course, we leverage the best of what Verizon can give us when it makes sense. And certainly we leverage our partnerships there too. So it's been a good experience.
All right. So the question I was trying to ask earlier, was around how do you approach conversations with colleagues, trusted advisors, or even family who you turn to? How do you approach those conversations around advice and support? Yeah.
Well, first of all, obviously, there's things you're not going to talk about. So let's just start with that. Like there's a level of integrity because, we are publicly traded, obviously. So when you're talking to people in any format, the goal here is you're talking about leadership attributes, really is what I'm thinking about, and choices, how to think about to make choices. It's not the choice you're making, it's the framework for the choice, right? Because so often other people have experienced similar choices. And I think that to me is what's most interesting is like, okay, someone who's seen this exact problem 25 times is more helpful to me than saying, solve my problem. Because if they can solve my problem, then that's a one-off. I want to learn from someone how to solve the problem 25 times over, right? And I think that's what I try to think about when I'm talking about these other communities of people that I try to lean towards and learn from. And we also help each other. I think that's part of it too, is we can grow together. And that's another way to think about it as well.
Framework of choices. I love that. And is there a visible way on how to make some of these big decisions as a group, the leadership team at Visible? Is there something that you'd say is the visible way as the framework?
It's interesting. So you can imagine, so I'll just give you the example. Like when you're a small team and it's 3 people or 5 people, it's very easy to have a way. Then you multiply times 2, and then 2 again, then 2 again. Next thing, 50 people, and then whatever you thought was the way, you're like, wait a minute, was that clear enough? So I would tell you that yes, we actually do have a visible way. We have a series of leadership principles, a series of core values. I think our opportunity, like any early stage business, is what we think about is how do we actually bring that to life as we grow. It's every new person we add. I mean, that's one of the reasons, I interview almost 99% of all the staff, is we have to be on the same mindset. So this is much more about mindset, and then that framework of choices and the values we provide, because that's actually growing. Some of the strategic choices we made from the get-go are still true, but some of the ways we learn are actually we can improve on that. So it's not about staying static in the choices we made, it's about growing every day. So if I think if there's anything about the visible way, is really having a focus on simplicity, focusing on grit and determination on getting things done, and perseverance, and then a positive attitude and having a little fun on the other side.
So it sounds like some influence from your dad there.
Yeah, probably.
We have a question on some business metrics, if you're open to sharing whatever's public, around annualized revenue, a number of employees, major coverage states. Is there any of that type of information that you can share with us?
Yeah, so we cover the entire United States, all 50 states. We actually, because we're running on the back of Verizon's 4G LTE network, we have that same coverage base. I think in terms of employee base, so we have over 100 employees. So we've grown quite quickly in the last couple of years. While we don't share revenue details, but we're very happy with the performance of the business from a growth perspective. You can definitely see that in terms of the way we're interacting with consumers and kind of the general buzz you start to see across press as we continue to grow. So we're very pleased with the growth profile of the last couple of years.
That's great. And our good friend Andre has a question around where you see the brand in 3 years. Where do you see Visible 3 years from now?
Yeah. I think we are continuing to push forward in terms of what we think about ourselves as a business. We are really focused on making a difference. We are purpose driven. And in many ways, that means we have to show up for our consumers. So I think for anything else, we still have a very broad spectrum of the US population that's still learning about us. And in a moment like now, when there's so many unemployed, we think there's an opportunity to help. And so for us, it's number one, staying the course. Simplicity is the core value for us. But at the same time, getting more people to know about us through organic growth. And we've seen that continue to go well as members tell others about them, what we are up to, and sharing their good experiences.
Awesome. All right. Let me see. We have a few other questions here. I feel like we answered the first 2 there. The last one seems different in many ways. For a 7-person nationally distributed team, what is your value add to the traditional AT&T or an equivalent platform? It's from David.
Yeah.
If I asked that correctly.
Yeah, I think if I'm reading it correctly, David, I think you're asking about for a team that's kind of all over the place, how do you actually contribute to the core? 2 things. One, just because you're distributed doesn't mean that you can't actually collaborate. So that's just one thing I think is really crucial. We've learned that. That's what work from home fundamentally is about. But globally distributed teams are the name of the game, whether it's here or whether it's across the US. I think then the value added is by providing results, by providing frameworks for execution. That's how we showcase value to other parts of the larger business. And for any other business, I think it's the same, particularly when you're a subsidiary type of setup like we are.
Nice. Well, Miguel, I think those are the rest of the questions there. Thank you so much. We're incredibly proud of you and what you're doing at Visible. Any last minute pieces of advice for the people that are tuning in on what they can take to go forward?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity, Pedro, Vianney. It's been great to share a little bit of our story and my story. I would just say, at the end of the day, it's all about just perseverance and focus. I think every day is a new day. Stay positive, particularly now. And, let's stay connected. We're a small community of people, all of us, but part of a larger community. And the more we help each other, the better the world around us gets. So hopefully we can just stay connected and stay in conversation.
That's great.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. I wanted to come on and wrap up. Again, thank you all so much for your questions as well to our audience. If you want to see this again, this will be available for broadcasting afterwards. So feel free to share these insights with your networks, and the replay will be sent after. And lastly, we'd love your feedback. As always, we'll be sending a survey. So let us know what topics you'd like to hear next, what you thought of today. And thank you again, everybody. We'll see you back here for the next one. Be well. Take care. Miguel, Pedro, thank you.